life right now as a Fulham fan is pretty great. 5 wins, 3 draws, 4 defeats, sitting ninth in the table, coming off the back of a pretty disappointing game against Wolves, but really there's not a huge amount to complain about. Some great signings with Smith Rowe coming in, Anderson being really good at the back, but look, like I said, off the back of that Wolves game, it's touch and go this weekend, so we'll see how we bounce back. Hey everyone, Jack here from That's So Craven. We're a Fulham podcast, and look, life right now as a Fulham fan is pretty great. 5 wins, 3 draws, 4 defeats, sitting ninth in the table, coming off the back of a pretty disappointing game against Wolves, but really there's not a huge amount to complain about. Some great signings with Smith Rowe coming in, Anderson being really good at the back, but look, like I said, off the back of that Wolves game, it's touch and go this weekend, so we'll see how we bounce back. In terms of how Marco Silva's done so far this season, he's been great. Tactically, we know he's an incredible coach, and look, it's really proven after a couple of seasons in the Premier League now that he's right up the very top with some of the best coaches in the league. He's got us really well drilled. There's some really great accounts such as Cottage Tactico on X and Blue Sky who dives deep into Marco's tactics, and it's definitely worth a look if you're interested to work out how Fulham actually play this season. In terms of our aims for this season and what Marco's aims, it's always first things first, let's avoid relegation, but I think Marco's looking a little higher up the table, and so are we. We're sitting just, I think, 4 points out of second place at the moment, so we should realistically be hoping for a push for European spots, but I think we'd all be very happy with another mid-table finish. This feels like a bit of a building year for us when you consider we lost Polina, we lost Mitrovic the year before, we lost Willian, Tosin. These are all key players who've played massive parts over the last couple of seasons for us, so we're constantly rebuilding, and so really if we were able to confirm a mid-table spot again, I think we'd all be pretty happy with that. In terms of Spurs this season, I mean, it's the Spurs way. We're Aussies, we understand what Ange Postecoglou's all about. And it's that attacking football that's exciting. It's good to watch, but it does leave you open. And I think back to when Fulham beat Spurs 3-0 last season, and we looked like we dominated that game, but then when you look at the way Spurs played against Man City, I just don't think we know how the game's going to pan out until probably the first 15-20 minutes, so even further into the game, because you just don't know which Spurs is going to rock up on the day, and we say it about Fulham as well. You just don't know which team you're going to get on the day. So, you lost Ipswich a few weeks ago, and then flogged Man City 4-0. I love Ange as a coach. I think it's great that Spurs took a chance on him, and I'm a big fan of his, and always keep an eye out for how Spurs are doing because of that. But look, I think there's always an opportunity for us to take on Spurs and get a result, especially when I look at Marco and the way he is able to break down opposition sides and outthink opposition managers. I think the high line that Spurs play gives us an opportunity. So in terms of favourite memories of this fixture, it has to be that victory last year for us. It was such a good win against what is a very, very good side as well. So it's hard to go past that. In terms of Spurs players that I fear, I think it has to be Son every time. Van de Ven would usually be one, but obviously he's going to be missing for this fixture, I believe. I think defensively he's rock solid, but also just what he offers coming out of defence, I think that's something we would really struggle with, because he could easily blaze through our midfield and cause us grief. But really, when you look at a player with quality that Son has, we saw it when we played against Wolves last week in our preview for the game. We looked at Cunha and just said, he can produce these moments of magic, and that's what kills you. And unfortunately, it did kill us on the day. And I think Son has the opportunity to do that against us as well. In terms of who Fulham's players you should look out for would be, Smith Rowe is the obvious one, but he does have a tendency to float in and out of games, so it really depends on what day you get him and what mood he's in on the day, if you will. He was superb for a couple of weeks, and then in the game against Wolves just sort of went missing for a while. I'd expect for this game, I wouldn't be surprised to see some changes from the previous lineup, so I think maybe Adama could come in, and he would be one to look out for, especially if Spurs are going to continue to play that high line. I would suggest that Adama will be looking to get in behind. I also think Rodrigo Muniz is probably half a chance of getting a start. Jimenez has fired blanks for the last 4 weeks, so I wouldn't be surprised if Muniz managed to get himself into the starting lineup. And he's a big presence up front. He causes defenders a lot of grief. He's very physical. And he links up really well with Reece Nelson on the wing and Adama on the wing as well. So on top of that, someone like Iwobi has just been excellent. We saw the goal against Wolves, but across the whole season, he's been top class. There's a lot of good players out there at the moment. I think one thing to look at in terms of team news, Joachim Andersen is probably going to be out, which is a big loss for us. He came off with what looked like a calf injury. We haven't heard an update yet on that. So I expect he'll be out for the game, which it'll be a big loss for us because he's been a rock solid part of our defence, and he is sort of our outlet in terms of getting out of defence. He's very good with the ball at his feet. So I think that's probably the biggest team news, but I expect some changes. So I wouldn't look at the last 11 and expect that to be the same team that Marco puts out, especially after a loss like that. There's blokes like Harry Wilson knocking on the door. He's been in great form. So I think there's going to be some changes. In terms of the game, it's going to be an open one. Fulham never come to the game and park the bus, not against any team. We always go on the front foot, and I think Spurs are pretty similar in that fashion. So I expect an open game. There will be goals. It's not going to be a drab draw by any chance. In terms of predictions for the season, I fully expect Fulham to sort of nestle around that 11th to 8th region, maybe 12th to 8th, and I think we'd all be pretty happy with that. Ideally, we'd love to be pushing for Europe, but it might just be one more year too soon for us unless we really strengthen during the January transfer window. For Spurs, if you can get some consistency, I fully expect European football. If that's Champions League, that might be a step too far, with Chelsea now getting back to the Chelsea of old, if you will, and Man City struggling a little bit at the moment, but you expect they'll always come good latter half of the season. Arsenal playing well, Liverpool playing well. It might be a bit of a push for Champions League spots, but Spurs will definitely be there or thereabouts by the end of the season. In terms of predicted lineup, it's a tough one, but I'll give it a crack for Fulham. Leno will be in goal. I think we'll see Kenny Tete continue. I expect Anderson will be injured, and so centre-back pairing of Diop and Bassi. Robinson at left-back. Sander Berge missed out in the last game. I think we'll see Lukic probably continue because he did well having come back from injury. So Lukic will play in the 6. We'll have Pereira most likely in the 8. And then in the 10 you'll probably see Smith Rowe. Across the front, I expect we'll see Alex Iwobi out on the left and Adama out on the right, and then Rodrigo Muniz up front. There's quite a few different possibilities and options there, so keep an eye on what Marco says in his press conference during the week, and it's going to be a great game for sure. Really looking forward to this one. Just another plug for our podcast. We're called That's So Craven. We're a Fulham podcast. We based kind of globally at the moment. We've got 3 of us out here in Australia and a handful of people in the UK as well who are part of the team. So we really appreciate anyone who follows us. You can subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. You can also find us on Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram. and we have a great Discord community as well that we're really proud of. So please, if you are a Fulham fan, do get involved. And look, fingers crossed for this weekend. It's going to be a great game. But as always, come on, you Whites.